In the courts and alleys of St. Giles, the air is thick enough to chew. Charles Dickens, Sketches by Boz 1836. This is not the version of Victorian poverty you have seen in costume dramas with soft focus and sweeping orchestral scores. That is the ratio this system produced. 23 hours of confinement for 1 hour of movement. The photographs show orderly rows of brick. The reality was a single room, 10 feet by 10 feet, shared by 6 bodies, with a ceiling you could touch standing upright. The first thing you need to understand about this room is that it was never intended to be a home. It was intended to be a container. The cost of construction was minimized at every stage. Lath and plaster over cheap timber, single-glazed windows set in rotting frames, floorboards laid directly over earth that had never been leveled. The assumption built into every commission was temporary occupancy, rapid turnover, maximum yield per square foot. But the 1880s had almost no reliable method of maintenance. Landlords collected weekly rent. Repairs waited for structural collapse. To understand what that meant, you need to picture what these walls actually were. Plaster mixed with horsehair, applied wet, dried unevenly. The surface you lean against at 3 a.m. is not smooth. It is pitted, cracked, stained with the condensation of 50 previous occupants' breath. Plaster absorbs. The street outside offered almost nothing worth absorbing. Coal smoke, horse manure, open sewer effluent, the metallic tang of tannery runoff from the river. Your wall does not filter, it accumulates. The dark patches near the floor are not decorative. They are rising damp, carrying salts from the ground, eating the plaster from within. By the time you notice the bulge, the lath behind has already softened. The floor beneath your bare feet tells a similar story. These are not the wide, polished boards of a middle-class pahala. These are narrow planks, knotted, warped, laid with gaps wide enough to drop a farthing through. They were installed green, meaning they shrank as they dried, opening seams that never closed. Underneath, earth, sometimes packed clay, sometimes rubble, never a vapor barrier. The moisture from the ground migrates upward, meeting the cold night air at the surface of the board, condensing into a film you feel before you see it. Your socks, if you have socks, will be damp by morning. Damp fabric against skin for 8 hours produces predictable results. Ventilation is a theoretical concept. The single window, if it opens at all, does so on a rusted hinge that requires 2 hands and significant force. Most tenants do not apply that force. The cold that enters is not refreshing. It is a cutting draft that settles at ankle level, circulating the room's existing air without replacing it. The ceiling height is 7 feet 6 inches. You can verify this by reaching upward. Your fingertips meet plaster, not lath, which means the room has not yet collapsed. The air you breathe has been exhaled, re-inhaled and warmed by the bodies sleeping on the floor around you. Carbon dioxide concentration rises after midnight. By 4 a.m. the headache begins. The door does not seal. A gap of ½ an inch runs along the bottom, another along the latch side. Sound travels through these gaps. You hear the family in the next room arguing at 2 a.m. You hear the child coughing in the room above. You hear the landlord's footsteps on the stairs at 7 a.m., collecting rent. The door's primary function is not privacy. It is a barrier against the corridor's direct line of sight, a minimal concession to the legal definition of a separate dwelling. The lock, if present, is a simple latch. It keeps out curiosity. It does not keep out determination. Light enters through the window in a single narrow beam. At noon in summer it reaches the far wall. At noon in winter it barely clears the sill. The glass is not clear. It is seeded with bubbles, distorted by uneven manufacture, streaked with grime that has not been washed in years. You do not wash it. Washing requires water, soap, a cloth, time. You have none of these in surplus. The beam that does enter illuminates dust motes in suspension. They do not sparkle. They hang, heavy with particulate matter from the street, from the coal fire in the corner, from the fabric of your own clothing. You breathe them. The corner where the walls meet the ceiling is a repository. Cobwebs collect there, not from neglect alone, but from air currents that deposit dust in the still zone above head height. The webs are not decorative. They are traps. They catch the ash from the fire, the fibers from worn clothing, the dried secretions from coughs. When the landlord finally sends a man to scrape the ceiling, a rare event, the debris that falls is not just plaster. It is a compacted record of every breath taken in the room for the past 18 months. The fireplace is not a source of reliable heat. It is a hole in the wall with a cast iron grate, connected to a flue that has not been swept since the previous tenant moved out. Soot buildup restricts draft. Smoke backs into the room. You learn to burn small amounts of coal or wood scraps or anything that will catch in short bursts. The heat produced is localized. It warms the air within 3 feet of the grate. The rest of the room remains at ambient temperature, which in January is 45 degrees Fahrenheit. Your body radiates heat into that space. The cold surfaces absorb it. The calculation is constant, unconscious. How much fuel to burn? For how long? To achieve a marginal increase in comfort without exhausting your weekly allowance. The bed is not a bed. It is a straw-filled tick placed directly on the floorboards. The straw compresses under weight, forming hollows that align with hips and shoulders. After 3 months of use, the tick no longer provides support. It provides a contour. You settle into it not by choice, but by gravity. The straw inside absorbs moisture, sweat, spilled liquids, the humidity of the room. It does not dry fully between uses. By the end of the week, the tick has gained weight. It has also gained odor. The smell is not simply unpleasant. It is a chemical signal of decomposition. Straw breaks down, organic matter ferments. The room's limited ventilation cannot remove the byproducts. You share this space with 5 other people. The allocation is not random. It is economic. The rent is 3 shillings and 6 pence per week. Divided 6 ways, that is 7 pence per person. A factory hand earns 18 shillings per week if employed full-time. The math is not abstract. It is the difference between eating and not eating. The bodies around you are not strangers. They are your sister, your brother-in-law, their 2 children, a lodger you met through a cousin. Privacy is not a value this system recognizes. It is a luxury you cannot afford. The sound of breathing, of shifting, of coughing is the baseline auditory environment. You do not notice it until it stops. Then you notice the silence, and the silence means someone has left, or someone has died. The room's dimensions are fixed. Your movement within them is not. You learn the paths that avoid the worst drafts, the spots where the floorboard does not creak, the angle at which you can stand to see the door without turning your head. These are not preferences. They are adaptations. The body is an archive of spatial constraints. Your shoulders have learned to angle through the doorframe without brushing the jambs. Your feet know which board to avoid at 3 a.m. Your eyes have mapped the beam of light across the floor, hour by hour, season by season. This knowledge is not written down. It is stored in muscle memory, in reflex, in the unconscious calculations you make every time you move. The photographs show a tidy interior, a neatly made bed, a clean hearth. The reality was a single room, 10 feet by 10 feet, shared by 6 bodies, with a ceiling you could touch standing upright. That is the ratio this system produced. 23 hours of confinement for 1 hour of movement. The walls absorbed the breath, the floor absorbed the damp, the air absorbed the smoke. And you, standing in the center of it, absorbing everything, began the day not with a choice, but with a calculation. How much of yourself could you spend and still have enough left to survive the next 23 hours? Which brings you to the body inside this room. And the body is where the real problem begins. The cold that settles at ankle level demanded constant micro-adjustments in posture, which meant sustained muscle tension in the calves and lower back. Bodies working hard produce heat. Wool absorbs moisture. Cotton retains dampness. Your clothing, in contact with skin for 18 hours without change, absorbed sweat completely. The combination of inadequate calories, restricted breathing in high CO2 air, prolonged standing on unyielding boards, cold drafts meeting body heat at the ankles, and sustained anxiety about rent produced predictable physiological results. Your core temperature fluctuates between 97.2 and 98.1 degrees Fahrenheit throughout the morning. Not fever, not health, a marginal range maintained by constant metabolic expenditure. You burn fuel to stay warm. You have limited fuel. The calculation is not conscious. It is cellular. Your feet tell the first story. The floorboards are not level. They slope toward the door, a deliberate construction choice to facilitate drainage in the event of flooding. A rare occurrence that nevertheless dictated the architecture. Your weight distributes unevenly. The ball of your right foot bears 15% more pressure than the left. After 2 hours of standing, The soft tissue under that metatarsal head begins to compress. Blood flow restricts. Nerves signal discomfort. You shift your weight. The left foot now bears the load. The cycle repeats. By noon, both feet carry micro-injuries. Bruised tissue, inflamed tendons, the early stages of chilblains where cold meets compromised circulation. Your hands are next. The water you use for washing, if you use water, is drawn from a communal pump shared by 47 other residents. The handle is iron, cold to the touch, worn smooth by thousands of grips. You pump. The first gallon is cloudy with sediment from the pipe. You discard it. The second is clearer. You collect it in a chipped enamel basin. The water temperature is 52 degrees Fahrenheit. Your hands, submerged for 30 seconds to wash your face, lose heat at a rate of 0.3 degrees per minute. Vasoconstriction reduces blood flow to the fingers. Dexterity declines. The simple act of buttoning your shirt requires 3 attempts. Your respiratory system adapts to the air quality. The particulate concentration in the room at 8 a.m. measures approximately 300 micrograms per cubic meter. The legal limit for outdoor air, established in the 1875 Public Health Act, is 150. You are indoors. The particles are not abstract. They are coal ash, horse dander, textile fibers, dried mucus aerosolized by coughing, the microscopic debris of plaster erosion. Your nasal passages filter the largest particles. The smaller ones, under 10 microns, reach your bronchioles. Your cilia attempt to move them upward. The mucus that traps them thickens in the dry, cold air. By mid-morning, your throat feels raw, not sick. Raw, a mechanical irritation, not an infection. The distinction matters. Infection requires treatment. Irritation requires digestive system, operates on a schedule dictated by availability, not biology. Breakfast, if it occurs, consists of bread and weak tea. The bread is dense, made with lower-grade flour, often adulterated with chalk or alum to improve appearance. Your stomach acid must work harder to break it down. The tea contains tannins that inhibit iron absorption. You need iron. Your last menstrual cycle, if you are female and of childbearing age, depleted your stores. The bread does not replenish them. The tea actively prevents replenishment. The calculation is not nutritional. It is caloric, how many pence for how many calories, with no accounting for micronutrients. Your body runs a deficit. It borrows from reserves. The reserves are finite. Your sleep, when it comes, is fractured. The room does not support continuous rest. The noise from the corridor peaks at 11 p.m., 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. The shift changes for night labourers, the return of pub closings, the early departures for dock work. Your sleep cycles fragment accordingly. You achieve 90-minute REM cycles interrupted by 20-minute wakeful periods. Over 8 hours in bed, you accumulate approximately 4.5 hours of actual sleep. The deficit compounds. By day 4 of the week, your reaction time slows by 12%. Your error rate in manual tasks increases by 18%. These are not moral failings. They are physiological facts. The clothing you wear compounds the strain. It is not designed for comfort. It is designed for durability and modesty in that order. The wool of your skirt or trousers weighs 1.2 pounds when dry. When damp from sweat, from rain, from the room's humidity, it weighs 1.8 pounds. That extra 0.6 pounds is distributed across your hips and thighs. Your gait adjusts. Your stride shortens by 2 centimeters. Your energy expenditure per step increases by 3%. Over 10,000 steps in a day, that is an additional 180 kilocalories burned. You do not have 180 kilocalories to spare. The corset, if you wear one, is not the fashion plate version. It is a work corset. Fewer bones, cheaper fabric, laced to a 28-inch waist, not for aesthetics, but because that was the size it was purchased at 3 years ago, when your body was different. It restricts diaphragmatic expansion. Your breathing shifts from abdominal to thoracic. Lung capacity decreases by 15%. You compensate by increasing respiratory rate. The trade-off: more breaths, less oxygen per breath. The air you are breathing is already low in oxygen, high in CO2. The corset makes the deficit worse. You do not faint, you adapt. It is survival at a cost. Your skin tells the final story. The soap you use, if you use soap, is a coarse lye-based bar, pH 10.5. Healthy skin is pH 5.5. The alkalinity strips natural oils. Your epidermis dries, cracks, develops microfissures. These are not visible to the naked eye. They are felt as tightness, as itching, as a low-grade irritation that never resolves. Bacteria colonize the fissures. Your immune system responds. The inflammation is localized, subclinical. It does not make you sick. It makes you tired. Every immune response consumes energy. You have limited energy. The photographs show robust workers, rosy-cheeked children, sturdy matrons. The reality was a body operating at 78% of optimal function, maintaining homeostasis through constant metabolic trade-off, borrowing from tomorrow to pay for today. That is the ratio this system produced. 23 hours of physiological strain for 1 hour of marginal recovery. The walls absorbed the breath, the floor absorbed the damp, the air absorbed the smoke, and your body, standing in the center of it, absorbed everything. The cold, the particulates, the noise, the anxiety, the inadequate nutrition, the fractured sleep. It stored these inputs not as memory but as wear. Micro tears in muscle, inflammation in joints, exhaustion in the adrenal glands. The dress remembered everything. Your body remembered more. The Common Lodging Houses Act of 1853 had an opinion about ventilation. Section 7 specified, "Every room used as a sleeping apartment shall be provided with sufficient means of ventilation to be approved by the medical officer of health." The phrasing "sufficient means" was not decorative. It meant exactly what it said. The officer decided the landlord complied minimally. The tenant bore the consequence. Non-compliance carried a penalty of 40 shillings. 40 shillings was 2 weeks' rent for your room. The landlord calculated the risk. You absorbed the result. The bureaucratic machinery of the parish vestry extended, in other words, all the way down to the question of whether your single window could open more than 3 inches. In 1878, the St. Giles District Board of Health issued a notice to the owner of your building. The cellar dwelling at number 12 Court requires immediate abatement of nuisance arising from defective drainage. The notice was printed on official paper, stamped, filed in triplicate. The drainage was not repaired. The notice was followed by a second notice, then a third. Each notice generated paperwork. Each paperwork generated a fee. The fee was added to the property's administrative costs. The costs were passed to you in the form of unchanged rent and unchanged conditions. The system functioned exactly as designed. Your rent book is a physical record of this function. It is a small cloth-bound ledger, 4 inches by 6 inches, issued by the landlord's agent. The agent you present 7 pence. The amount, a tick mark in the paid column. The ink is iron gall, permanent, brown-black. The paper is cheap, acidic, already yellowing at the edges. Your name is entered once, at the top of the first page. After that, only the tick marks matter. The book does not record your employment status. It does not record your health. It does not record the number of bodies sleeping in the room. It records one fact: payment received. The absence of a tick mark is the only entry that triggers action. That action is not inquiry. It is eviction. The eviction process is also documented. The notice to quit form, prescribed by the County Courts Act of 1846, requires the landlord to specify the premises demised and the date on which possession is required. The form is served by a bailiff, who enters the date of service in a separate register. You have 14 days to vacate. The 14 days are not a grace period. They are a procedural requirement. During those 14 days, you continue to pay rent. During those 14 days, you search for alternative accommodation. Alternative accommodation requires a deposit, a reference, proof of employment. You have none of these in surplus. The paperwork protects the landlord's legal position. It does not protect your housing. Sanitation ordinances exist in parallel. The Nuisances Removal and Diseases Prevention Act of 1848 empowered local authorities to inspect any dwelling house alleged to be in a state unfit for human habitation. The key word is alleged. An allegation required a complainant. A complainant required time, literacy, and confidence in the system. You have limited time, variable literacy, and documented reason to distrust official intervention. The inspection, when it occurs, follows a checklist: structural soundness, water supply, waste disposal, ventilation. The inspector marks boxes. He does not sleep in the room. He does not breathe the air at 4 a.m. His report concludes, premises require improvement. The improvement is defined as at the owner's discretion. The discretion is exercised as minimal expenditure. The lodging house bylaws add another layer. The Metropolitan Police Act of 1839 regulated common lodging houses by requiring registration, limiting occupancy to one person per 50 cubic feet of airspace, and mandating separate beds for unrelated adults of opposite sexes. Your room contains 750 cubic feet of air. That is 125 cubic feet per person. The bylaw is violated by a factor of 2.5. The violation is not concealed. It is visible from the street. 6 shadows moving behind a single window. The enforcement mechanism is periodic inspection. The inspection schedule is unpredictable. The penalty for the landlord is a fine. The penalty for you is displacement. You learn the inspector's pattern. You learn which floorboards to avoid when he visits. You learn to stand in the corner that minimizes the visible occupancy count. Compliance is performance. Performance is survival. The gatekeeping function operates through paperwork. To secure a room, you must provide a reference from a previous landlord. The reference is a handwritten note on plain paper stating, "The bearer has occupied premises under my management and has paid rent regularly." The note does not state the conditions of those premises. It does not state the number of occupants. It does not state whether the bearer was evicted for cause or for economic necessity. The note is a token. The token grants access. The access is temporary. The temporary becomes permanent only through continued payment. The system does not evaluate your character. It evaluates your liquidity. The exception clause reveals the underlying logic. Section 12 of the Common Lodging Houses Act allows the medical officer to grant a temporary exemption from the ventilation requirement in cases of extreme weather. The exemption is granted in writing. It is valid for 14 days. It is renewable. Your room, which never met the ventilation requirement, now has official documentation stating that its non-compliance is authorized. The paperwork does not change the air quality. It changes the legal liability. The landlord is protected. You are not. The bureaucratic language is precise, sufficient, reasonable, as far as practicable. These terms appear throughout the regulations. They are not ambiguities. They are delegations. They transfer the burden of definition from the legislator to the inspector, from the inspector to the landlord, from the landlord to you. You define sufficient ventilation by whether you can breathe without headache. You define reasonable occupancy by whether you can lie down without touching another body. You define practicable maintenance by whether the roof leaks during rain. The definitions are personal. The regulations are impersonal. The gap between them is where you live. The photographs show orderly ledgers, official stamps, neatly filed reports. The reality was a single rent book, a chipped inkwell, a landlord's agent who could not read the fine print but could count the coins. That is the ratio this system produced. 23 hours of bureaucratic abstraction for 1 hour of tangible consequence. The walls absorbed the breath, the floor absorbed the damp, the air absorbed the smoke, and the paperwork stacked in a parish office absorbed the liability. Your name appeared once at the top of a page. After that, only the tick marks mattered. The tick marks remembered everything. The system remembered more. The queue at the communal pump begins at 5:47 a.m. You know the time not by a clock, but by the position of the gas lamp's glow against the court's eastern wall. The lamp flickers. The flicker rate changes with the gas pressure, which drops as more households light their burners. You have learned to read the flicker. It tells you when to leave your room to secure a place in line. The line is not formal. It is a consensus of bodies, arranged by arrival, maintained by subtle shifts of weight, by the angle of a shoulder, that the person who touched the pump handle last retains priority for the next draw. You join the line. Your position is 7th. The pump delivers 2-3 gallons per minute. Each household draws an average of 4 gallons. The math is not abstract. It is the difference between washing and not washing. The street logistics dictate your movement after water. The court is 18 feet wide at its narrowest point. 2 carts cannot pass. 1 cart plus pedestrians creates a bottleneck. The bottleneck resolves through hierarchy. The coal wagon has priority. The milk float yield. The costermonger's barrow waits. The pedestrian steps into the gutter. The gutter contains liquid waste from upstairs windows, rain runoff, horse urine, and the residual effluent from the open sewer at the court's terminus. Your boots, if you have boots, absorb the mixture. The The leather, if untreated, swells, the stitching weakens, the sole separates at the toe. You do not notice the damage immediately. You notice it at 3 p.m. when your foot slides inside the compromised boot, when the blister forms, when the pain becomes a constant companion for the remainder of your waking hours. The public spectacle is not entertainment. It is surveillance. The street is a stage where reputation is performed and assessed. The woman who appears with clean apron and brushed hair signals household management. The man who leaves at dawn with tools over his shoulder signals employability. The child who attends school, even irregularly, signals parental investment in respectability. You perform your version of this spectacle. You dampen a cloth with your pumped water. You wipe your face, your hand, the visible portions of your clothing. You do not achieve cleanliness. You achieve the appearance of having attempted cleanliness. The distinction matters. Appearance affects access. Access affects survival. The commute to labour is not a journey. It is a negotiation with space, time and competition. The nearest dock employment office is 1.2 miles away. Walking at your adjusted pace, shortened stride, compromised boot, carrying the weight of damp clothing, requires 22 minutes. The employment office opens at 6:30 a.m. You must arrive by 6:25 to secure a position in the foreman's selection queue. The queue forms along the curb. It extends for 40 yards when labour is plentiful. It extends for 120 yards when labour is scarce. Today it extends for 85 yards. You calculate your odds, approximately 1 in 3 chance of selection. The calculation is not hopeful, it is procedural. You join the queue. The crowd dynamics in the queue follow predictable patterns. The men at the front stand straight, shoulders back, tools visible. They have been selected before. They know the foreman's preferences. The men in the middle shift weight, avoid eye contact, keep their hands in pockets. They have been rejected recently. They anticipate rejection. The men at the back, where you stand, scan the crowd for alternative, casual labour on a passing cart, errand work from a shopkeeper, the possibility of returning to the court without having earned a day's wage. The anxiety is not psychological, it is physiological. Your cortisol levels rise. Your heart rate increases by 12 beats per minute. Your palms sweat. The sweat cools in the morning air, your hands stiffen. Dexterity declines. The simple act of presenting your hands for inspection, calloused, clean, capable, requires conscious effort. The selection process is brief. The foreman walks the line. He does not speak. Each point is a contract. 4 pence per hour, 10-hour minimum, no breaks, no complaints. You are not pointed at. You remain in the queue. Your odds improve marginally. A cart pulls up beside the curb. A driver calls for 2 men to load crates. The pay is 3 pence per hour, irregular duration, risk of injury. You step forward. You are selected. The loading begins. The physical labour compounds the morning's strain. Each crate weighs 45 pounds. You lift from the ground to waist height, then to shoulder height, then into the cart bed. The motion engages your quadriceps, your glutes, your lower back, your deltoids, your muscles, already fatigued from fractured sleep and inadequate nutrition. Recruit additional motor units. The recruitment is inefficient. Lactic acid accumulates. Your breathing rate increases. The air you breathe contains coal dust from the nearby yard, horse dander from the street, particulate matter from the cart's iron-rimmed wheels on cobblestone. Your respiratory system, already compromised by the room's air quality, filters less effectively. You cough. The cough is not illness. It is mechanical clearance. It consumes energy. The public spectacle continues during labour. Passers-by observe. Their observations are not neutral. The woman in the silk dress averts her gaze. The child in the short trousers points. The policeman on the beat notes your presence, your activity, your location. The notation is mental. It may become written. The written note may become a record. The record may affect future employment. You perform labour not only for the wage, you perform visibility, you perform compliance, you perform the appearance of deserving the wage you receive. The performance is exhausting. It consumes cognitive resources you do not have in surplus. The logistical reality of the street extends to sustenance. At 11 a.m., you have the opportunity to purchase food. The options are a penny dense adulterated flour, a half penny of boiled potatoes, cold salted, a farthing of weak tea, no milk, no sugar. You calculate caloric return per penny. You select the potatoes. They provide 120 kilocalories. Your morning labor has expended approximately 380 kilocalories. The deficit is 260 kilocalories. You do not feel hunger as a sharp sensation. You feel it as a decline in coordination, a slowing of reaction time, a marginal increases in error rate when handling the next crate. The error is not catastrophic. It is a dropped corner, a strained muscle, a curse under your breath. The curse is not moral failing. It is physiological feedback. The afternoon commute home reverses the morning's route, but not its effects. Your boots have deteriorated further. Your clothing is damp with sweat, stained with street grime, heavy with absorbed particulates. Your body temperature fluctuates as you move from sunlit street to shaded court. The transition triggers vasoconstriction, then vasodilation. Your cardiovascular system works harder to maintain homeostasis. The work is invisible. It is also exhausting. The photographs show bustling streets, productive laborers, orderly commerce. The reality was a queue of 85 bodies competing for 28 positions. A cart loaded with 45-pound crates by hands already compromised. A penny loaf that did not replenish the calories expended in earning the penny. That is the ratio this system produced. 23 hours of logistical negotiation for 1 hour of marginal caloric surplus. The walls absorbed the breath, the floor absorbed the damp, the air absorbed the smoke, and the street, with its cobblestones and gutters and crowds, absorbed your energy, your time, your attention. The pump handle remembered everything. The foreman's finger remembered more. You return to the court at 6:14 p.m. The gas lamp flickers at a different rate now. Higher pressure, evening demand. The flicker tells you the day is ending, not beginning. Your body registers the time not by clock but by cumulative fatigue. The ache in your lower back from lifting. The stiffness in your fingers from cold. The rawness in your throat from particular exposure. You have earned 3 shillings and 4 pence for 10 hours of labour. The rent for your share of the room is 7 pence. The calculation is not abstract. It is the difference between eating tonight and eating tomorrow. The room you re-enter has not changed. The damp patch on the eastern wall has expanded by 1.2 inches since morning. The straw tick in the corner has compressed further under the weight of bodies that never left. The air contains the same particulate concentration, now augmented by coal smoke from evening fires, food odours from improvised meals, the metabolic byproducts of 6 bodies occupying 750 cubic feet. You do not notice the smell. You notice its absence when you step into the street. The absence is not freshness. It is simply different. Your evening routine is a compression of the morning's rituals, executed with reduced energy reserves. The water you draw from the pump is colder, 48 degrees Fahrenheit. Your hands, already compromised by labour, lose heat fast. The coarse soap, if used, strips the remaining natural oils from skin already dried by wind and particulates. The microfissures deepen. The irritation intensifies. You do not treat it. Treatment requires ossus. You allocate resources to calories, to rent, to the preservation of clothing. Skin is a secondary concern. It will heal or it will not. The system does not account for its condition. The meal, if it occurs, follows the same caloric logic as breakfast. Bread, perhaps. A small portion of cheese if the wage allowed. Tea, always tea. The tannins inhibit iron absorption. You need iron. Your labour has depleted your stores. The bread does not replenish them. The tea actively prevents replenishment. The calculation is not nutritional, it is caloric. How many pence for how many calories, with no accounting for micronutrients. Your body runs a deficit. It borrows from reserves. The reserves are finite. The conversation in the room is not leisure, it is logistics. Who will draw water tomorrow? Who will stand in the employment queue? Who has a contact at the dock? Who owes a debt? Who expects a visit from the rent collector? The information exchanged is not gossip, it is survival data. The tone is not emotional, it is procedural. Emotion consumes energy. You have limited energy. Sleep approaches not as rest but as a temporary cessation of expenditure. The straw tick offers the same contour as the night before. Your body settles into it not by choice but by gravity. The cold settles at ankle level. The draft enters through the gap under the door. The air, heavy with CO2 and particulates, fills your lungs. Your breathing shifts from abdominal to thoracic, constrained by the work corset, by fatigue, by the marginal oxygen content of the room. Your heart rate decreases by 8 beats per minute. Your core temperature dropped by 0.4 degrees. These are not signs of recovery. They are signs of conservation. The system that produced this room, this routine, this exhaustion, was not accidental. It was functional. The room's dimensions maximized rental yield per square foot. The construction materials minimized capital expenditure. The maintenance schedule deferred costs until structural failure. The bureaucratic framework protected property rights without enforcing habitability. The labour market ensured a surplus of workers, keeping wages below the threshold of comfort. The public health regulations created paperwork without producing change. None of it had been designed with comfort as a relevant consideration. The social purpose was reproduction, not biological reproduction alone, though that occurred at high rates. Social reproduction, the regeneration of a labour force at minimal cost to capital. Your exhaustion was not a bug, it was a feature. It ensured your return to labour the next day, not out of ambition, but out of necessity. Your marginal caloric surplus was not generosity, it was calibration, enough to sustain you, not enough to liberate you. Your fractured sleep was not oversight, it was design. A body too tired to organise, too depleted to resist, too preoccupied with survival to question the structure that produced its exhaustion. The photographs show orderly streets, respectable workers, stable communities. The reality was a room that absorbed breath, a floor that absorbed damp, a street that absorbed energy, a system that absorbed labour and returned exhaustion. That is the ratio this system produced. 23 hours of confinement for 1 hour of movement, 7 hours of suffering for 30 seconds of dignity, 10 hours of labour for 3 shillings and 4 pence. The walls absorbed the breath, the floor absorbed the damp, the air absorbed the smoke, and the system, documented in ledgers and regulations and rent books, absorbed the liability. You are 34 years old. You have spent 7 pence on a room that measures 10 feet by 10 feet. You have stood in queues, lifted crates, negotiated gutters, performed respectability for 14 hours. All of it for 3 shillings and 4 pence. The parish vestry called it adequate accommodation. The medical officer called it a nuisance requiring abatement. The rent book remembered everything. The walls remembered more. The gas lamp outside your window flickers at a slower rate now. The street noise recedes. Not silence, but a lower frequency of sound. The distant cart, the occasional shout, the cough from the room above. Your body, which has been calculating, adjusting, enduring for 18 waking hours, begins the transition to conservation. Heart rate decreases. Respiratory rate slows. Muscle tension releases in increments, not all at once. The cold at ankle level remains. The damp in the plaster remains. The particulates in the air them now. Notice requires energy. You allocate energy to sleep. The ratio returns to you, not as a thought but as a rhythm. 23 hours of confinement for 1 hour of movement. You have lived it today. You will live it tomorrow. The system that produced it does not require your consent. It requires your participation. Your participation is guaranteed by the mathematics of rent, of wages, of calories. The mathematics are not cruel, they are indifferent. Indifference is more durable than cruelty. Cruelty can be reformed. Indifference persists. The straw tick beneath you has absorbed sweat, spilled liquids, the humidity of breath, the oils of skin. It has gained weight, it has gained odour, it has gained a history. The history is not written. It is stored in fibre, in fermentation, in the slow breakdown of organic matter. The tick does not judge. It does not remember. It simply walls hold similarly. The plaster holds condensation, soot, the microscopic debris of breath. The floorboards hold damp, foot traffic, the vibrations of movement. The room holds you. You hold the day. The photograph showed a different version. Soft focus, sweeping scores, graceful curtsies in palaces you will never enter. That version is not a lie. It is a selection. It selects the exceptional, the documented, the preserved. It does not select the routine, the unrecorded, the absorbed. The routine is what you live. The unrecorded is what you breathe. The absorbed is what you become. If you want to know what came next, listen for the flicker of the gas lamp at 5:47 a.m. Listen for the consensus of bodies forming a queue. Listen for the foreman's finger, the pump handle's resistance, the landlord's agent counting coins. The system does not announce itself. It operates. It absorbs. It persists. The walls absorb the silence. The dress remembered everything. You will too.